This is the second part of the webinar on fiscal year 2024 Mayfair's budget entry guidance. We will go through steps 8 to 10 of the budget. If you have any questions about this training, please send an email to the OPI School Finance Division. At this point, the TFS has been completed and steps 1 through 7 of the budget reporting have been entered and all validations have been corrected. This is a reminder that balance sheet entries from the TFS are used to establish fund balance for each budgeted fund, including the allowed operating reserves. For example, from the trustee's financial summary, the fund balance for budget at the bottom of this page, line 48 of the TFS balance sheet, is $167,484.95. This amount carries over to the budget as fund balance. We are looking at the general fund. This page also shows the pre-filled budget amounts. These amounts must match the preliminary budget data sheets. Here's the copy of the preliminary budget data sheet. It matches what is in the Mayfair screens. If you were lucky enough to have passed a general fund levy, you need to enter that levy amount to be able to budget at the highest budget with a vote amount. Enter the amount of the approved levy in the appropriate data entry spot, which would be the amount approved on ballot by voters. If you do not, you will not be able to budget at the amount the voters approved. If there was no levy amount approved, your adopted budget would be D, highest budget without a vote, at $1,994,357.89. If there was an approved levy, it would be the highest budget with a vote, which would be $2,211,552.83. We are at step 8, Fund 1, where you will begin entering your fiscal year 2024 budget for each of the budgeted funds in Mayfair's. In this slide, we are at fiscal year 2024. You need to choose your LE, and we are fund code would be the general fund 01. To add a budget amount, click on the budget limits, then add a new budget record. You would want to do the 0001 adopted budget and insert an amount. The adopted budget entry would be either the highest budget without a vote or the highest budget. This is showing the adopted budget amount as highest budget with a vote at the $2,211,552.83. If there was an approved levy amount, you would again click on the Add a New Budget record. Now you need an amount approved on the ballot by voters. Enter the levy amount, in this case, $217,194.94 as budget code 0151, amount approved on ballot by voters. And here it is. Once you do these steps, this is what the data entry screen would look like, showing an adopted budget of $2,211,552.83. That would be your expenditure budget. And then the amount approved on the ballot by the voters would be the $217,194.94. To add reserves, you would click on Reserves, add a new budget record, and then a budget code of 0961 for operating reserves. Select and enter 0961 operating reserves. The general fund reserve limit is 10% of the ensuing year's budget, or $10,000, whichever is greater. Setting maximum reserves is recommended. The amount reserved cannot exceed the fund balance for budget from the trustee's financial summary, line 48. This is the amount that had come over from the TFS, and in this example, the amount is $167,484.95. If fund balance for budget from the TFS line 48 exceeds the operating reserves, the district may hold excess reserves in limited cases. To set aside valid excess reserves, select and enter the 0963 reserved for unused, protested, or delinquent taxes, or 0964 reserved for tax audit receipts. Remember to reserve excess funds in 0963 reserved for unused, protested, delinquent taxes, or the 0964 reserve for tax audits. The 0961 operating reserve must be at the maximum allowed. You can only hold excess reserves if your operating reserves are full. If excess reserves were held on the prior year budget, or if revenues that could potentially be held in excess reserves were reported on the TFS, the screen will display an amount in the ending excess reserves limit amount. After reserves are entered, 0970 unreserved fund balance displays the amount of fund balance remaining to be reappropriated. That amount will reduce base levies and GTB aid unless the district specifies that a portion of excess reserves from last year's budget will be used to fund the overpays. As stated above, the unreserved fund balance reappropriated may not exceed 15% of the ensuing year's maximum general fund budget. Take note of the red messages on the screen. These will tell you what your maximum operating reserves can be. In this slide, the maximum operating reserves would be the fund balance of $167,484.95, which is less than the 10% of the adopted budget. And that is all that there is for this district to reserve. To add revenues, click on the Revenues tab. This will bring up a list of revenues that have been calculated and pre-filled. You can see the pre-filled amounts there, the direct state aid, quality educator, at-risk student, etc. You have already verified these amounts from the pre-filled data verification sheet. To add any new additional revenues, click on the budget code drop-down arrow and enter revenues by codes from this list. These amounts are not calculated and should match your vendor software and treasurer's reports. When finished entering your budget amount, reserves, and revenues from the screen, you should print the budget report. Look at it and verify the amounts you have entered for this budget. This is page 1 of the budget report, and here's page 2 of the report. Next is the transportation fund. You will want to budget all costs associated with transporting students to and from school only. And you want to check prior year budgets. It's a good idea to do the transportation budgeting spreadsheet on the OPI website under Leadership, School Finance, Budget Spreadsheets and Guidance. You will find the transportation budgeting spreadsheet. And here it is. You will have to enter bus routes, miles, days, etc. into the spreadsheet. It is a little time consuming, but very necessary to set your budget. For the on schedule, enter the sum of estimated individual transportation contract reimbursements, which is the daily contract rates times the number of days transported, plus the sum of estimated bus route reimbursements, which is the bus mileage rate times miles times number of days to be transported. The on schedule amount should include the county on schedule plus the state on schedule amounts summed together, or the full cost of the bus routes plus individual contracts. Total days covers the actual number of days transportation services were actually operated for students to participate in the minimum aggregate hours of instruction required for the school year. On-schedule funding for the contingency budget may be paid only if additional contracts, bus routes, or bus route extensions are established after the budget is set for students who become eligible transportees after the beginning of the year. The OPI recommends putting the contingency amount. The overschedule is the sum of on-schedule and contingency subtracted from the adopted budget. This is the district's local responsibility, financed by a permissive district tax levy. Mayfair's calculates by using the adopted budget less the on-schedule amount and less the contingency entered by the district. Take the time to do the transportation budget spreadsheet. It is so helpful.
Also, look at last year's budget and consider any changes that may have happened or are going to happen.
On the screen, you can see how all the numbers tie out. You have your adopted budget amount, reserves, cannot exceed the amount of the fund balance reappropriated, the county on schedule reimbursement, the state on schedule reimbursement, contingency from your over schedule. In the bottom left corner, the on schedule plus contingency amounts are added together and split in half for county on schedule and state on schedule amounts on the right top screen. From the screen, you should print the budget report and look at it for accuracy.
And here is a review of what you have entered for this budget.
For step 8, the bus depreciation fund, you should have all your assets put in from step 3. Go to the asset depreciation page, hit the select button on each of the assets and enter the levy amount. Your district may levy up to 20% of the historical cost of each bus for 7.5 years. Over its lifetime, the district may levy up to 150% of the historical cost of the bus. The district does not have to levy the full 20% each year. I'm showing you the TFS report from the previous year to show you the ending fund balance and how it rolls over to the budget for the next year. So from this TFS, Schedule of Revenues, Expenditures, and Changes in Fund Balance for the Bus Depreciation Reserve Fund, you can see the ending balance from the TFS is $212,806.82.
Select one of the radio buttons. Most often, the district will choose the Use Non-Levy Revenue to add budget authority and not reduce the levy amount. This will increase your budget authority to build up a reserve to purchase buses in the future. Click on the Budget and Reserves tab. Your budget will be your fund balance reappropriated, any district tax levy from the depreciation schedule that was previously entered, and you can look at this schedule by clicking on the blue Go to Bus Depreciation page, and also any additional revenues that you have entered. Because this is already a reserve fund, you do not need to have operating reserves in this fund. If you do enter reserves in this fund, you will not be able to spend them without a budget amendment. Go to the Summary tab to see the calculated adopted budget, fund balance reappropriated, and other revenues, and the mills for this fund. Print the budget report and review it for accuracy. Here's the budget report. You can see the fund balance for budget, $212,806.82. This is the reappropriation amount. Then the district tax levy amount, $125,796. This is the total amount depreciated on all of the buses from step 8. The district is lucky enough to have oil and gas money of $140,000 for this fund. The total of these revenues equal the adopted budget of $478,602.82.
Step 8, Fund 13 is a tuition fund. I'm not real familiar with the spreadsheet, but as with all of the budget calculators, if you have this situation, you need to use this tool to make sure you are budgeting enough funds. You may levy permissively to pay tuition costs for resident students attending a school outside the resident district, or resident students attending private non-sectarian day treatment programs, for special education costs for resident students, and to pay tuition obligations for foster group home or students confined to a children's psychiatric hospital or residential treatment facility. The district may levy for actual costs from the prior fiscal year. The district may levy for the amount of tuition due to the other districts or to state facilities based on invoices received. The Fund 15 tuition fund is a permissively levied fund. Consequently, it is not subject to voter approval. However, projected mill increases in this fund are subject to voter notification by March 31st. The district may levy an amount necessary to pay for the full cost of providing a free, appropriate public education to any child with a disability who lives in the district, and the district may calculate the estimated need by using the cost calculator provided by the OPI. No operating reserves are allowed in this fund, and all fund balance dollars must be reappropriated. This is what the in-district special education permissive levy calculator looks like. It can be found on the OPR website at the school finance, tuition and attendance, calculation spreadsheets, in-district special education permissive levy calculator. Click on the instructions tab and read information on how to get it started. Once you put your adopted budget amount in, Mayfairs will calculate the district tax levy amount for you. This will be the fund balance, $13,878.91, less the adopted budget amount. Click on the Summary tab to see the mill calculation. You can also go to the Print Budget Report and look at the fund calculation. If you have any questions regarding this fund, click on the Fund Instructions. We're still here at step 8 now, moving on to the retirement fund. Most often, a school will design their own retirement spreadsheet and update it each year to set their retirement budget amount. So within the retirement fund, you need to calculate amounts needed for each employee. You have your retirement, which is your TRS and PERS, FICA and Medicare, and unemployment. Be sure to add extra in case of new employees, or if you anticipate any teachers retiring at the end of the year. So questions to ask is if your district used a spreadsheet previously, or has your district used a budget planner from your accounting system, or has your district budgeted the same amount every year? See the compensation expenditure spreadsheet on the OPI website. And retirement costs for employees paid from federal funds must be paid from the federal programs rather than the retirement fund, except for impact aid and school foods.
Go to the Budget and Reserves tab and add a new budget record. Select and enter 0001 Adopted Budget. This fund is supported by a county-wide retirement levy. To allow the county to accurately determine the levy, districts must submit a list of all employment positions and their salaries to the county superintendent when submitting the adopted budget. For the operating reserves, go to the Budget and Reserves, add a new budget record, 0961 Operating Reserves, and enter an amount. An operating reserve of up to 20% of the adopted budget is permitted and recommended, as shortfalls can present significant problems to both the district and the county. This fund is not supported by a district tax levy. The retirement fund receives the following revenues. Non-levy revenues are entered by the district and should be estimated. Fund balance reappropriated, which Mayfairs calculates, and a county-wide distribution, again, Mayfairs calculates. Use the fund instructions to guide you if needed.
Step 8, Fund 17, the Adult Education Fund. Many districts set the same budget every year. And if you have an adult ed coordinator, work with them to set the budget. A district that operates an adult education program must use this fund. This fund is financed from adult education fees and a district mill levy. The adult education fund is permissively levied. Consequently, it is not subject to voter approval. However, projected mill increases in this fund are subject to voter notification by March 31st. We want to enter the amount that includes adult education programs to be funded using fees collected from individuals participating in adult education programs, a district tax levy and non-levy revenues, and also any unreserved fund balance reappropriated. These 4 things will make up your adopted budget, and operating reserve is limited to 35% of the adopted budget or the available fund balance from the TFS balance sheet. You would want to go to Budget and Reserves tab, add a new budget record, budget code 001, adopted budget, enter the adopted budget amount, and do the same steps for the operating reserve. Go to the Revenues tab to enter those, choose from the budget code drop-down codes, go to the Summary tab, and review the fund or print the budget report and review for accuracy. step 8, for Fund 19, the non-operational fund. This fund is currently only used by less than a handful of schools. So if you're not one of those schools, you can skip over it. In step 8, you have the technology fund, Fund 28. To set the budget, you will have to decide which radio button to use. So to use the non-levy revenue tab, the district must choose either to use non-levy revenue to lower the tax levy for an approved technology levy, or use non-levy revenues to add to budget authority and not reduce the levy amount. Regardless of how the district chooses to use non-levy revenues, estimates under 9100 other revenues and 9710 residual equity transfers in are used to add budget authority, not to reduce the tax levy.
If you need to calculate a budget, there is the Technology Fund Levy spreadsheet on the OPI website under School Finance, Budgets, Budget Spreadsheets and Guidance. Read the instructions on how to use the spreadsheet. Download a copy of this to your desktop. Click on the Enable Editing box, and then enter your data to calculate a budget for you. The technology budget will pre-fill. As you add revenues, it will increase. The technology budget is made up of voted levy plus other revenues, which includes the state technology aid, plus fund balance reappropriated. The state tech aid amount can be found on the pre-filled data verification sheet you printed at the beginning of the TFS process. Non-levy revenues are entered by the district and should be estimated. And here's a list of some of the non-levy revenue source codes.
Here's an example of the technology fund budget. You have the fund balance from the TFS and the state technology aid. There are no other revenues, so the adopted budget is a total of these two amounts, which would be the $10,429.16 plus your revenue of the state technology aid of $1,706.65 gives this fund an adopted budget of $12,135.81. The next fund would be Fund 29, the Flexibility Fund. The Flexibility Fund is your fund balance reappropriated plus other revenues, interest, oil and gas payments, rental dollars, innovative educational program, transformational learning payment, and or levy amount. Gives you your budget. You can't adopt a budget, and any revenues you enter will create your budget along with any fund balance reappropriated from your TFS. Tax credit donations are no longer in this fund, but are now going to Fund 15. And revenues included here are your Montana Advanced Opportunity and Transformational Learning Aid, plus other codes that you can see there on the screen. Estimated 1123 coal gross proceeds are pre-filled by the OPI. And the district may permissively levy for a transformational learning aid match up to 100% of their award. Still in step 8, Fund 50, the debt service, you would go to Budgets and Revenue Reserves tab, add a new budget record, put in your adopted budget, enter an amount, and this should be the amount of the bond principal and interest payments plus agent fees. Do the same steps for the operating reserves. So the adopted budget should include principal, interest, and agent fees for each bond and for SID or RIDs. Operating reserves is a limited reserve, may be held for cash flow purposes. The reserve is allowed within 20-9-438(3) of the Montana Code annotated. The statute allows a reserve approximating the payments due between July 1st and November 30th of the ensuing year. However, payments due July 1st should be included in the budget of the prior year and should not have been reserved. The available fund balance must be reappropriated to fund the budget. Go to the Revenues tab, add revenues. the district taxes will be calculated. In the top screen is a review of the summary. The adopted budget is a total of the bond payments, principal and interest and agency fees, $182,750. The full appropriated fund balance was put into reserves. The district tax levy is the $182,450. The adopted budget less revenues of $300 of interest earnings. And at the bottom screen, this is what the bond payment amounts look like. And here's a copy of a debt service schedule. The final budgeted fund is your building reserve fund. It is also probably the most complex of the funds. There's a lot of moving parts here. Your building reserve fund budget consists of your voted and or permissive levies, other revenues such as the state school major maintenance aid funding, and oil and gas rentals can also go in here, plus your fund balance reappropriated. All of these will give you your building reserve fund budget. So within the building reserve fund, there are subfunds, and the school safety subfund 611. This subfund in the building reserve fund must be created for the funds transferred to the building reserve fund for school safety and security, pursuant of 20-9-236 MCA. Voted levy subfund 612. This subfund may impose a levy with the approval of the qualified electors of the district for raising money for the future construction, equipping or enlarging the school building, or for purchasing land needed for school purposes in the district, or funding an intercap loan. And permissive subfund is 613, and this subfund may authorize and impose a levy for the purpose of raising revenue for identified school major maintenance. And transition subfund 614. This subfund is used to impose a voted levy with the approval of the qualified electors of the district to provide funding for transition costs incurred when the trustees open a new school under the provisions of Title 20, Chapter 6, or close a school, replace a school building, or consolidate with or annex another district. And the duration of the levy for transition costs may not exceed 6 years. The use of project reporter codes are also important in this fund. Safety transfers under subfund 611 must be spent within 2 fiscal years after the funds are transferred. Any remaining money must be transferred back to the originating fund from which the revenue was transferred. And it is imperative that both revenue and expenditures are reported using a project reporter code in order to comply with this section. And your project reporter code can be the same for both your revenues and expenditures. Budgeted revenues for the permissive levy subfund 613 also need a project reporter code, and because they must be accurate and in compliance with 20-9-525 Montana Code Annotated, to ensure that the district receives the maximum amount of state major maintenance aid when available. Accurate reporting of expenditures using the permissive levy subfund 613 and the project reporter code ensures that OPI collects and provides accurate information to the legislature to justify state aid for the local levies. Paul Taylor has added a tab to the 2024 general fund budgeting spreadsheet found on the OPI website. See the red building reserve fiscal year 2024 tab at the bottom. Click on this tab and find your school district. This gives your state SMA amount, the portion the state will pay, and the amount you need to permissively levy to fill your SMA box. Save this general fund budgeting spreadsheet to your desktop for later when you are completing your building reserve budget for 2024, as well as your other budgets. And here is the budget spreadsheet that I was talking about. It can be found on the OPI website under budget spreadsheets and guidance, and the fiscal year 2024 general fund budget spreadsheet. Start at the Inputs tab at the bottom of the spreadsheet. Enter your LE number and scroll along the bottom tabs to the red, I call it fuchsia, Building Reserve Fiscal Year 2024 tab. Scroll through the LE numbers to yours in column A. Column D, E will have your small box mount depending on if you're an elementary or a high school. Columns F, G will have the state share of the small box mount, and columns K, L will have the district amount to levy. This is the amount you will permissively levy your taxpayers to get the state match. If you do not levy the full amount, the state major maintenance aid funding will decrease. You can also use the Building Reserve tab, and it's the one before this one to get the small box amount for this district. For every $1 this district spends of local effort, the state will pay $2.19. Your small box amount is also printed on page 3 of your preliminary budget data sheets, showing also your dollar amount. So this is a schedule of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance in the balance sheet from your trustee's financial summary. And here it shows the different revenues and expenditures from the Building Reserve Fund. Note the ending balance of $47,941.80. This will be reappropriated to the budget. You will see this amount as fund balance reappropriated. Here you decide again if you want to lower the tax levy or add budget authority. The Building Reserve Fund can be a difficult fund. Be sure you understand the funds before entering the budget information. Review the fund instructions from this page and understand what each of the blue tabs refers to, and print the budget report and review for accuracy.
This tab already includes the adopted budget, which is calculated by Mayfairs using amounts to be levied, plus permissive levy amounts entered through the permissive revenue tab, plus unreserved fund balance reappropriated, any amount of the balance accumulated in the fund to date, plus TIF fund balance if applicable, plus any voted subfund estimated non-levy revenues, revenue codes 1123 through 3460 if the option selected is use non-levy revenue to add budget authority and not reduce the levy amount, plus any estimated non-voted subfund non-levy revenue and transfers codes 1125 through 9101, plus the state major maintenance aid. This tab will include the unreserved fund balance reappropriated, which Mayfairs calculates and comes over from the trustee's financial summary, and Building Reserve voted levy plus the permissive building reserve levy. The SMA revenue 3283 amount is included in the permissive revenues tab and will calculate based on the permissive levy amount entered, plus any estimated permissive subfund and non-levy revenues or transfers. The permissive levy plus estimated revenues plus legal transfers plus the state major maintenance aid may not exceed the school major maintenance maximum allowable amount.
Permissive revenues have certain requirements. See the budget instructions and or the fund instructions and know what they are. And districts with a newly issued voted levy go to the Go to Levies page tab, blue tab, and then go to Building the Reserve, Setup page, add a new building reserve, complete the required information, and save. After the setup is complete, return to the Go to Buildings Reserve Levy page and enter the levy amount for the budget year. Again, hit save, and then click on the Go to Budget page to finish your budget. For a district with a previously entered voted levy and the levy continues to have remaining years associated, select the levy and enter the intended levy amount for the budget year and save. So you would choose that select button within the green there and add in the amount that you're wanting to levy. Go to the Summary tab to review the budget you have entered, the unreserved fund balance reappropriated from the TFS, the permissive levy amount, district tax levy, plus the small money will be your adopted budget, and this is calculated by the OPI. And check your permissive mill levies. And permissive mill levies cannot exceed 10 for an elementary or high school, or 20 for a K-12 school district. Print the budget report for this fund. Verify the information that you have entered is correct. And here you have your fund balance reappropriated, plus your state school major maintenance aid, plus your district tax levy, and these three numbers added together will give you your adopted budget. When you're finished putting in the budget, you can print the validation report from the step 8 screen, or you can go to step 9 of the budget, which is the validation. In step 9, you will want to select the validations to include in the report. You will want to select all validations.
In step 9 of the validation, all corrective validations must be fixed before the district can submit. Red warning or informational warnings alert the user to possible errors. You may submit with warning errors. However, before submission, a district should understand all of the warning validations, and please call the OPI if there are questions about these validations. It is recommended that you print the budget report and the TFS report if you haven't already. And here's how you get there. From reports, go to budget and then budget, or reports and then TFS and TFS, which is not showing on the current slide.
On your budget report, review the summary on page 2. This is a consolidated version of your adopted budgets, reserves, unreserved fund balance reappropriated, and other revenues, district property tax levies, and your district mills for each of your budgeted funds. This is a quick place to look to check the amount to make sure your budget is correctly entered into Mayfair's, and you'll want to compare this report to your last year's budget report to look for any large discrepancies. This summary also adds your mills. You'll want to check these against a few prior years for any large increases or decreases and make sure you understand the differences. Here is a copy of the budget report cover sheet. This is where your taxable valuation will show up on your budget report along with your district A and B. Step 10 is the submission to the OPI, and once both the TFS and budget reports have been reviewed and are correct, you will submit them to the OPI together on step 10 of the budget process. If you are a special education cooperative, you will only have the trustee's financial summary report. If the district finds there is an error in submission, the district may request the OPI to unsubmit the district if the county superintendent has not established the mill levies with the county treasurer and the county superintendent approves the resubmission, the district will be unsubmitted. The district must complete all steps in Mayfair's by September 15th. Retain a copy for the district with the submit ID number on it. And good luck, and please reach out to the OPI if you need assistance with this process.